want to tell you about a game. Not just any game. Finally, a game that has unlocked the brains of film buffs, cinephiles, and overly obsessed movie folk around the world. A game that has sparked a fire in me I thought was lost long ago. A game that challenges you mentally like no other can, to search through the recesses of your mind palace on an extreme level. This vid is gonna go some places. Romance, horror, fantasy, and even funny stuff. But I promise you this. Eventually, this video leads us to the critically acclaimed Mr. Bean's Holiday. And from that, end with me crying alone in my room. This is a video about Cine to Nerdle. It was just like any other day. My life was uneventful, maybe mundane and boring. I was sitting at my desk, getting ready to eat lunch, and I realized I need a video to watch before I begin. Upon opening YouTube, I am hit with this video from the second channel of one film reviewing YouTuber, Carsten Runquist. A second channel enjoyer myself, I clicked. The video was different from his usual ones. I was watching him play a game I had never seen before. He appeared to be dueling someone in naming films back and forth, yet there was a timer, there was a search bar, lifelines, and points. He played as he explained the game and mentioned how he had seen the streamer and Peloton Chad, Northern Lion, play it. Suddenly I could feel it. My blood pressure went up a little. Something new and exciting, maybe even a little dangerous. I wanted more, so I decided to find a Northern Lion video. And then it happened. Video after video, I watched this man name movie after movie, beat opponent after opponent almost with ease. As a self-proclaimed film enjoyer, something to many of my friends I have, dare say, a bountiful knowledge of, here was this streamer on my screen winning every game with movies I had never seen nor heard of. These were not art house niche A24 titles. He was playing garbage mid-2000s 90s films. No peak cinema, no kino. I was impressed. But it shook me. I became self-conscious. Many I had never seen or heard of, and as a guy who went to university to study film, I felt staged up. The more I watched, the more I became so invested in each individual match. So much that at one point I found myself yelling at the screen with movie titles, like a dad watching a game of football as if the players could hear him, screaming with a beer in his hand at what plays to do. I had to know more. I wanted to play it. No, my pride of film knowledge demanded I compete in the gladiatorial arena of Cine to Nerdle. I went to the website with adrenaline rushing through me. I made an account. I won my second game, and then another win, a loss. I shouldn't have played that film, but on the next one, I can get it. Just put me back in, coach. You think I don't know who is in that film? Brother, you've messed with the wrong guy. A win, another win, a win, a loss, but then a win. And again, and again, and again, I queued up, again and again. I was hooked. So what is it? Who? How? Why? All the questions I will answer. But first I have to ask you one. Have you ever mentioned to a friend or discussed what actors are or are not in a film? Either passionately or just coincidentally talk about someone who is on the screen? If you have, then Cine to Nerdle kind of boils that down to the core of its gameplay. Specifically, the battle mode with other players. Here is the basic rundown of how it works. The idea is to name films back and forth as a timer for each turn counts down to 0. If your player cannot name a film within the allotted time, the game is over. It sounds pretty simple, right? Just name movies, right? Like, dude, that's easy mode. In theory, sure, but to emphasize where film knowledge comes into play, I'm going to show you a match I played and how this little browser game goes down. First, you match with another player. I am, of course, Letterboxd Luffy because I couldn't think of a better name. Please leave me alone. Once the game begins, the website pulls from a list of films which change every day. They can range from the 20s to the modern day and be from anywhere in the world. I start first, and the film is Bridget Jones's Diary. So I decided to go with Heretic, a film from 2024 that also stars Hugh Grant, who is in Bridget Jones's Diary. Then my opponent chooses the next film. They chose Bridget Jones: The Edge of Reason because it also has Hugh Grant in it. This is called the setup phase, and it lasts for 4 turns. It helps get the game rolling like the first cards in a game of poker. No other conditions that influence the game happen here. The only restrictions right now are the 2 basic rules. You cannot name the same film if it has already been played, and you must name one before time runs out. The game continuously keeps tracks and updates based on what films have been played and who you have played through. So now the setup phase is over, and my opponent played Eyes Wide Shut with their link being Nicole Kidman, and here is where the magic of Singing to Nerdle truly shines. The links. When you choose a film, it has to have some connection with the film before it via a person who is in that film. Hence why my guy played Nicole Kidman after I played The Railway Man. She is in both. This applies to the setup phase, so that's why we danced around Hugh Grant, because we were both thinking of films that he's been in. I know what you're thinking, just keep naming actors who are in the same movies and don't repeat them. That's, again, easy mode, dude. I got all my favorite actors right here and I'll keep playing them. To which I would say, sure. Like, you could do that. You could keep playing the actors that only you know. But you can't. Not with strikes. See how after he played Eyes Wide Shut, Nicole Kidman's name popped up to indicate the link. Right next to her name are the strikes. 3 strikes if the same actor is used, and that actor can no longer be used as a link. So if the next 2 turns played a film that had Nicole Kidman in it, we would need to diverge to other films. She cannot be the link anymore, but that doesn't mean films she is in are out of play. As an example, if we got the film The Beguiled starring Nicole Kidman and now she's been played out, I could play a Colin Farrell film and then later down the line with him pick Killing of a Sacred Deer, which has Nicole in it. And it's okay to play it because she's not the connection, he is. Any film you play, whether it has a connection you know about or not, is kept track of by the game. So if you played a couple of Adam Sandler movies, which all have Steve Buscemi in it, and decide to play a Steve Buscemi film, you may not realize he is no longer playable because he has had major or minor roles in those films you aren't aware of. Like the terrible Adam Sandler Jennifer Aniston rom-com film Just Go With It shocked me because Nicole Kidman is in it for like one part of the film, but she's in it. So if you're thinking of playing the entire filmography of your favorite actor you once saw in that stoner film you really like, you're not gonna last on this battlefield. Remember, this is a war of attrition to try and outsmart your opponent and wear them down. So the best way one could win is by placing your opponent into a film they have never even heard of. If you have never heard of any of the films I've listed so far, I am so sorry. This must be very overwhelming. But also, get some fucking movie magic in your life, man. Watch some Sofia Coppola or Yorgos Lanthimos films, dude. Go watch The Social Network. I won't be coming back for just 30% of your review when you're done. If you weebs are gonna play some shit, I best not see only Ghibli films. I want some goddamn motherfucking Kino in this arena like any Mamoru Hosoda film. If you feel unsure of what any of these films are or what actors are even in them, you are how I want my opponent to feel. Scared and worried of what film to play to get out of this seemingly impossible web of cinema I have spun. There is nothing more joyous in this world than seeing the other player try and play the films everyone tries to get out of this bind. Avengers Endgame, Movie 43, New Year's Eve, Avengers Infinity War. The films with all-star cast on the off chance anyone in this animated kino banger has some connection to the highest grossing film of all time. Please just get me out of this. I can hear the keys. But that's the beauty of the game. It is the skill involved when trying to remember who's been in what with whom. When I mentioned Mind Palace earlier, I fucking meant it. You need to be in there, looking through the folder cabinets that house your internal memory to try and think of what movie this dude has been in. All I got, National Treasure, 5 People You Meet in Heaven, and that's obscure. But when you get there and realize the movie you were thinking of and that link works, it's like the film Limitless, where everything just makes sense. You see all the connections, the third eye is open, 100% of your brain ready, and the universe at your fingertips. There is no way this dude stands a chance to get out of this. I play There's Something About Mary. He's panicking. He can't even think of anything. He can't even recall another Cameron Diaz film. He can't think of Shrek 2, 3, or 4, Night and Day, The Sweetest Thing. My man is freaking out. I can hear him tap away at the keys of some film. He's losing it. Victory is within. Escape. What the hell is this? This game would not be as fun if you were just the guy who can always trap people into the same bunch of films over and over again. And it would be fun versing that guy. That's all skill knowledge for sure, but here is where strategy comes into play with lifelines. In the updated battle mode, you can actually customize a kit to go into the game that best suits your level of knowledge. The escape you saw before is one lifeline that allows a player to jump to a random movie in hopes to reset the battlefield, somewhere that maybe the opponent doesn't know or does, or something more familiar to you, or maybe not. Films aren't just limited to English, they go everywhere, which makes things interesting when you finally do play Seven Samurai and your opponent hits back with high and low. Finally someone I can go bam for bam with. Skip is another lifeline that almost stops people from trying to put them in hard to get out films. For example, if I somehow trap the dude in an extremely goofy movie and he hits me with a skip, I then need to play the next movie. I have seen this movie hundreds of times as a kid, but besides using the Three Musketeers or Mickey's Once Upon a Christmas, this is tough. But I can use the lifeline cast or leading cast to see who is in it that may actually give me that rope I need to get out of Disney and back into my Fincherverse. But don't think when using cast it only tells you who starred in it, because remember, films aren't just actors. There are cinematographers, writers, directors, works based on the people who had a direct impact of being in the film or making it are valid ways to get from one film to the next. Speed up time for the other player or slow down time for you so you have more time to think. But there is the lifeline I consider my rock, my shield, my brick. This is block. And to explain how it works, it's time we mention win conditions. See, if the only way to win was to out-pretentious someone with some movie knowledge, the same metas would always be played. Win conditions give those who have a specific taste and knowledge of film. So let me ask you, what is your favorite genre of film, or the genre that you feel like you know the most? Romance, horror, or fantasy? In your toolkit, where you select your COD-style loadout of lifelines, you can actually choose a win condition. For genres, they have a certain amount of points you need so you can automatically win. For fantasy, you only need to name 4 films and you win. Partially, I like to use romance because there are so many films out there that are romance, and nearly every big actor you can think of has been in at least 2 of them. Fantasy is harder because while you have the big budget series that most people know, there are some that you'll think in your head is a fantasy, but don't count. And then there are some that you don't think count, but do. Look at you, Field of Dreams! This is a film where Kevin Costner builds his own baseball field and it brings in the ghosts of baseball legends. Like, this was nominated for 3 Oscars. Like, what the fuck, man? Like, people think cinema is dead, and this makes me think that's not the case. I don't know if I like or I hate this. Win conditions can be used so that the focus doesn't have to be cornering someone into some niche films, but have 2 valid strategies. Navigate your way to films that help you win your condition, and gamble on the knowledge if your opponent knows these films. The creator, Cindy Nerdle, sums it up perfectly as to why battle kits were a great addition. My idea with battle kits was to introduce a mechanic that would make each game feel fresh and unique depending on the player you were playing against. It would also allow players to personalize their gameplay according to their particular strengths/weaknesses in certain areas of film. It was also about, again, creating an experience for players that extends beyond their knowledge of film and encouraging them to think more laterally, which when works can feel so much more rewarding than just recalling memorized information. At least for me, it feels that way. As always, I know what you're thinking. Mugen, that means anyone can just spam films of romance, especially if there are a lot of actors and filmmakers that circulate the same genre. You're right. It could be hard for me to get to romance from Halloween through Jamie Lee Curtis, only for my opponent to just rip me back to that franchise. Hence why my beloved brick comes into play. Block is invaluable because it stops the opponent for that turn from playing a film that goes for their win condition. So let's say I want romance and my opponent wants fantasy. I play Little Women because 1, it's a romance, and 2, I know a bunch of actors in it who are also in a bunch of other romance films. It gives me options, and I can guess maybe what my opponent will play. But then I fucked up. Emma Watson is in Little Women, and she was a little fantasy series of films that are very well known. Harry Potter. I can pivot and go to The Circle, but then my opponent can just pick another Harry Potter film. I can try and strike out Emma Watson, but that's some valuable points that I'm leaving on the board, and I just gave them up. In an effort to get away, they just got 2 points. So let's play that scenario again, but this time, after I play Little Women, I use my brick. My opponent goes to play Harry Potter and is denied for that turn. Instead, they have to pick something else that isn't related to fantasy from that film. They might pick Lady Bird because Saoirse Ronan's in Little Women and that's all they can think of. But that's good for me because she is also in Brooklyn, which is a romance. Everything's working in my favor. Except, maybe after playing Lady Bird, they hit me with a brick because they know Brooklyn's a romance. Should I use my escape here, or can I name another Matt Damon film before he strikes out? Do I block this film because I know where my opponent is going, or do I gamble and hope this dude doesn't know this actor is also in something I know can win? This is how Cine Nerdle incepted itself into the part of my brain that stores dopamine, like a cordyceps infecting a tiny ant's brain. I am a puppet on the strings of this little browser game, made to play He's Just Not That Into You and Meet Joe Black, which are my 2 cards of the Exodia tapestry that is my wheelhouse. Am I meant to be here? Should I be making a little video essay about this? Should I not be making something about a piece of media that speaks to me on an emotional level as a human being? Maybe even some of the Kino films I play in my meta? I fucking love The Social Network, man. Why the hell am I making the video essay why you should watch The Social Network, or The Beauty of 1917? Have I fallen from grace? Am I losing my damn mind? Now here is where this tale of films and high elo gameplay may end. But of course, don't forget, we still have Mr. Bean's holiday to get to, and me crying in my room alone. So now I must ask what any self-respecting or low-tier video essayist would do. Why the hell does this game exist? When I turned 18, I left my home to study film at university, and one of the best things that came from it was meeting heaps of people who also loved films. Films of different kinds and people of different opinions was really cool, even if they were maybe a little snobbish now and then. It felt like there was always something happening in the world of movies that sparked conversation. It's the case with any subculture that circulates around a medium or hobby. You always have some aspect of what you like to talk about with people. When I was on sets and wanted to break some ice with the crew, I would pull out a game I learnt from a production company as an intern. It was called the IMDb game. You pick an actor and must list off that actor's most well-known films as listed on IMDb. It went surprisingly well with the film buffs, all of them yelling and guessing only to get stumped and remember after they've given up what that last film actually was. Being fascinated and or obsessed with movies goes two routes really. You end up wanting to make some, or you spend your time trying to watch them and learn all you can about the history of the medium. I would wager most end up in the latter category, and besides reviewing films, recommending them, or making content about them, discussing their history, there's no other kind of outlet to put that vast amount of knowledge to the test besides very uninteresting trivia games. During the pandemic seemed to be the perfect time where the creator, CineNerdle themselves, would decide to contribute something of their own. At the time, Wordle was kind of taking over the world, including my friend groups. And as someone who has always loved movies and puzzles, I wanted to see if I could create a daily game that my friends and I could play that was movie related. Out of that came the first CineNerdle app. The first CineNerdle is a really simple concept. You uncover sections of a frame from a movie and try to name the movie from as few sections of the frame as possible. The first CineNerdle was supposed to be a way for me to learn some rudimentary web development skills. I wasn't really thinking about creating a fun puzzle experience that felt a bit more rewarding to complete. I'm very glad that people enjoyed it, and there are those who still enjoy the simple, fun daily movie challenge. But I didn't really love that the game boiled down to you either recognize the movie or you don't. From the original CineNerdle app, its creator decided to make a sequel that was more ambitious and shockingly reached a wider audience than they ever expected. Even getting people from the film and TV industry contacting them and tweeting their results and even asking to make their own puzzles for others to try and solve. I remember the morning I woke up to find a message from Ayo Adibri saying that she and Lionel Boyce have been enjoying the puzzles and that she wanted to submit a couple puzzles of her own creation. I just couldn't believe that I was having a conversation with Ayo Adibri. Through their ambition to make CineNerdle more than a daily puzzle site, the creator toyed with what we know and love today as the battles. You could have it be similar to those trivia games I mentioned earlier, where basically whoever is more of a cinephile and has watched more behind the scenes content or interviews would end up winning. But this idea of linking led it to more about the films themselves and the strategy of remembering them. I would be lying, however, if I said I was always going for the level of depth in gameplay that the player base in Battle 1.0 was able to flesh out. As I thought about Battle more, I was also excited by the idea of a game where the tactics and gameplay are always just naturally changing based on current events in the real world, new movies being released, and a person's engagement with these events. I thought this would hopefully mean the game, by design, would continuously feel fresh and exciting, with new approaches to the game constantly in development. With all that in mind, I developed and released Battle in December 2023. After this happened, a certain Peloton-loving bald man who had been known to play the CineNerdle daily puzzles toyed around with the battle mode the day after it was released. Northern Lion opened the floodgates of all the new players and film buffs who, if they didn't want puzzles, they could instead test their knowledge against anyone who knows something about movies, becoming amazingly competitive, but also an experience to learn more about films as you play. I have never had more subtle hints that I need to watch Bram Stoker's Dracula from anywhere else. The more outlets for a hobby or community, the stronger it can be. Sports, you either play the game itself and or watch heaps of it. Chess, you play it and or watch it. Making films, especially ones on the level as those throughout history and even today, aren't as accessible. But the film medium is so broad in how you can interact with it. Making a short film of just you in a room can contribute something. The love for film and finding ways to express it, or the knowledge you have for it, can lead somewhere. There is an entire documentary about two boys who loved the film Raiders of the Lost Ark and decided to remake it shot for shot. Thankyou Nerdle is, in a way, another subsection of people who have always had that competitive nature for film and can now express it. The same way Letterboxd became a better cataloging and film reviewing experience, through which people could discover films through friends or what people of certain notoriety have watched and really liked. To try and learn more about the game and the community it spawned, I joined the official Thankyou Nerdle Discord, where I found people who discussed strategy, favorite films, and certain connections that led them out of binds, but also ones that they couldn't believe existed, leading to films that they never knew were real. And funny enough, to understand that animals are also actors, guys. Respect to Sam the orangutan. But despite all the metas, despite the lifelines, despite the strategy, and the ability to search through a mind palace, it eventually boils down to the only way of getting better at the game is the same thing you did before you started playing. Go watch films. The more you see and experience, the more you can actually come back and use those memorable films to play. For example, when I went down the Johnny English rabbit hole to try and box this one person I was playing, I eventually hit them with Rowan Atkinson's Mr. Bean's Holiday. I thought there was no way in this film that people would know. From memory, it's based in France, so there is a very small but possible chance that this person may know the foreign actors in it and may actually be able to pick someone out. They didn't. Instead, they chose someone so well known, still to this day, that I am struggling to still deal with this. My mouth dropped in shock, not that they knew the director or any of the French actors in the film, but instead played the film Antichrist through Willem Dafoe. Mr. Bean is connected to Antichrist. That is the first time that sentence has been said. I had to make sure this wasn't a glitch in the Matrix that I'm currently living in, but no, he's in it. He's a major part of the film and its story. The link is legit, but it made me think more about who is in actual movies and think back on not just movies I loved, but movies I don't think are good and have scenes that I can't forget. So, when I was stuck in films of the 60s, which I'm not very well versed in, I played one of the few that I had seen, which was Rosemary's Baby. I tried to box in this one person and see if they would escape, but instead, they hit me with a skip. And now I'm stuck with a film that I only know who directed it and nothing else about it. And I couldn't think of any more of their films they made. I searched through the recesses of my brain and realized that Roman Polanski, the infamous director and piece of shit of this film, was in a movie I saw when I was younger. A scene in Rush Hour 3, where Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan are getting beat with phone books when they arrive in France, only for the police captain to be Roman fucking Polanski. So weird, and this was before he fled from the US, but still, it's very odd that he's in this film. It got me out of my own box, but I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't seen Rush Hour 3, which, in essence, it's funny, but it's a terrible movie. But it's funny. So the more movies that I remember that aren't, as these kids say, kino, I started doing way better. I wanted to get ambitious and see what films I could play. Maybe if I watched an oldie. I know Toshiro Mifune from Kurosawa, but that's kind of about it. Maybe I should branch out. So I did what any pretentious person would do when trying to see what films of certain quality they should watch as a rite of passage. I looked at the Criterion Collection, and the first film they distributed was La Grande Illusion. It's a French film based in the First World War, and it's highly regarded in the history of cinema, especially French cinema. and I didn't really like it. I read about its significance in film history, I liked some of the shots, and I appreciated how it portrays this social class amongst soldiers. But it was one of those films I thought I probably won't play the next time I queue up, but I didn't care. I wasn't mad that I watched it. I didn't feel like I was wasting my time because I was watching a movie again. And I say it like that because for the past few years, I rarely ever watch films like I used to. If anything, the only time I watch one is when I just chuck on a favorite I've seen countless times in the background while I do a task and immediately get distracted by how good it is. But there was a time when I watched films often. I would go to the cinema at least once a week, and I would go to see films that had special screenings, but also just to see what people were talking about. I think ever since I started making videos, experiencing art took a back seat, especially because I made only manga videos for a long time. So I felt constantly compelled to just read what people were talking about or liked for a video, as opposed to maybe what I wanted or what piqued my interests. And if I thought a certain story was just fine, it was okay, I still felt obligated to make a video because my time was precious. I was constantly wanting to upload something, so I felt like I had to. I think there was a year post-pandemic where I went to the cinema a total of 4 times, maybe. Even at home, I wouldn't watch anything. I'd be sitting there and feel as though watching films was a waste of my time because I'm not getting anything out of this. I'm not getting anything I can make. That version of me, the constantly uploading version of me, would have watched La Grande Illusion and stopped halfway because I would have thought, this is a waste of time. There's no video to be made from this. I'm not enjoying it. This isn't going to be in my top 10 films of all time. So what's the point of me spending this time to experience this? So that brings us to me sitting in my room crying. And it wasn't anything as dramatic as, I've lost so many games, it broke me, my elo dropped, or that time is being lost more and more. I have less of it to watch movies, and that's kind of depressing. None of that. It was simply because I decided to watch another movie, and it was so beautiful. Based on the book by Peter Brown and directed by Chris Sanders, this movie is heartbreaking. Not because of any forced sad setups or the film trying to make you cry so it seems deeper than it is. This movie is about a task robot named Roz taking care of a baby goose while a hungry Pedro Pascal fox mocks and leeches off her hard work. That's the nutshell, but really, it's a story about a robot who, despite their programming or nature, decides to take care of someone as a task only for it to become more important than that. I could already feel myself getting choked up long before the emotional climax of the movie, and when it happened, I lost it. I couldn't keep it together as this baby goose says some of the most beautiful lines to a robot. I was crying in the club, but instead it was my room. If you love films like How to Train Your Dragon, Shrek, and just genuine compelling storytelling and animation where characters grow and learn to depend on others, please watch this film. There are countless movies like The Wild Robot that I have said to myself after seeing them in some marketing form, man, I'd really like to see that. but never would, and part of that is this lack of time and how much art there is, and there's so much to experience, it feels overwhelming to me. Is the art I'm experiencing now worth my time or isn't it? Can this be used and consumed? Can this be a video? What can I get from this? Is there a point for me watching all of this? Only for me to watch some movies to realize it doesn't matter if I get something out of it or not, because I'm finally experiencing an art form again. It doesn't matter. I had originally decided to make my next video on video game graphics. I'd even gotten so far as recording everything, and until a few days ago before writing this script, I felt extremely unhappy with what I was making. It wasn't exciting. I didn't care about what I was saying, and I just couldn't care less about editing it. So I scrapped it and sat down and I played some Thankyou Nerdle, only to get excited and remember all the films and experiences I could recall in my life of movie watching, just through a little game about movies. I suddenly refound a passion I felt I had to regain someday when I had more time. The thing that surprised me the most after playing this game non-stop is again how much everyone knows about films, but at the same time not. It's impossible to consume all of cinema and experience it all and know the threads that connect everything. Someone can know everything about Ozu, Kurosawa, and the films that starred Mifune, but they probably don't know all the little connections of the Adam Sandler verse. If you do, new guy just dropped. My point is, you can't experience it all. So to just experience something, even if it's something as tourist driven as Mr. Bean's Holiday, a 1937 French film that won't make your brain bigger, or an emotionally fulfilling movie like The Wild Robot, you should. And even if it's through a competitive nature, you'll be surprised by what you can find. The more rounds I play and the connections I see people make, I'm happy to see that watching movies isn't lost on me, and it isn't lost on all the people who make this game fun. So thank you, Thankyou Nerdle, for making me realize how much I still love the movies. Thanks so much for watching and making it to the end of the video. To further incentivize you to play Thankyou Nerdle battles, there is a link below in the description just waiting for you, so I'd recommend checking it out. I mean, you got this far, might as well. I'd also like to say a massive thank you to the creator themselves for answering all my questions and making this video a bit more informative, especially for the historians out there. Below in the description is a Discord you can join if you want, but also there's a Patreon where you can support videos like these for a single Australian dollar. That being said, I want to shout out to all those a part of the Patreon. Thanks a bunch to Lenoriel, Andrew Goss, Big Nerd, Robin, Corey, Jay the Rebel, Deus Vault, Skippy, Jeffrey M. Slavins, Mr. Lamb, William McGuire, Shingoku Satsu, Mark Tuorvinen, JK Sensei, Matthias, and Big Muscle Flex. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to give it a like and subscribe. It just lets YouTube know you like my videos. And if you're interested, maybe watch another one of these videos here. Thank you again. But that's all from me. My name is Mugen. As always, have a good one.